there we go. So hello everyone. Welcome to the final installment of our Career Insights series for the fall semester. Career Insights, Quantitative Skills, and Statistics. My name is Hyun. I'm an advisor here at Barnard. So we'll be hearing from 5 Barnard alums today. Thank you so much to our panelists for making the time to join us. The bios of our alums I'm going to drop in the chat in just a moment, and there will be an audience Q&A toward the end of our program. So for our students in the room who are interested in asking our panelists a question, feel free to unmute yourself when the time comes. You're also welcome to start writing your questions in the chat too. Okay, so we'll start off with introductions. So for our panelists, please introduce yourselves. What is your current role? And what sparked your initial interest in the work that you're doing now? And this is very casual, so you guys can just jump in and start speaking.
Hi, everybody. My name is Daileni. I was class 2020 at Barnard, so excited to be talking to you all. So I currently am a senior analyst at a market research agency. And if you're not familiar with market research, essentially you conduct insights and data-driven insights for different brands and companies to ensure that their marketing plan and whatever their product feature that they're launching is backed up by data. And so what really sparked my interest was I'm super interested in behavior of how people think and how that drives decisions, and especially in the products they purchase. So that's something that really interests me, and that's why I do the work that I do. It's really fun. I get to talk to huge clients at all times and basically see how their marketing can be improved with my insights.
I'll jump in. Thanks, Delaney, and thanks for organizing this. My name is Julia Mayo. I'm class of 07, which is quite a while ago now. I'm based out of Seattle, and I'm a senior applied scientist at Zillow on the Zestimate team. I've been in the tech industry for about 10 years, which I came to after completing my doctorate in physics at the University of Pennsylvania. I was drawn into tech widely because I was interested in a non-academic career that still used all of the programming and mathematical modeling skills that I had developed and honed during my doctoral work. Zillow in particular, I'm very passionate about housing data, housing affordability. I get to partner with different branches of the Federal Reserve, creating data products for them. So I like that balance of still having an academic research lens in a really applied industry setting.
I can hop in and go next. I'm Ohana Mohammed. I'm Barnard class of 2021. And right now I work as a iShares sales strategist at BlackRock, which means I focus on the ETF or exchange traded fund business. And I focus on figuring out who are top institutional clients. So that could be other big asset managers, pension funds, insurance companies, family offices, large institutions that need to invest their money too. So I figure out top client opportunities using data insights, which is really exciting. And I got interested in the space because I wanted to balance my interest in economics, math, and statistics with a job that allows me to work with real people and figuring out solutions for them for real world problems. And yeah, I was excited to work in at a company like BlackRock because it's an influential company that touches many different parts of the economy. So I felt like that was a great place to learn early on in my career.
I can go next. Hey everyone, I'm Anna Stoneman. I graduated from Barnard in 2018. I'm also having a little bit of connectivity issues, so hopefully this doesn't cut out. But I'm a senior data product manager with the City of Boston. So being a product manager, specifically working in data products, basically means that I am working with various stakeholders in the city to make sure that the products that my team, which is on the analytics team, is working with, making sure that we're delivering data sets that are actually usable by our end users, who are both stakeholders in different city agencies, as well as sometimes the general public. And I previously worked in industry before moving into the public sector, but majored in urban studies at Barnard. So it was a nice reason to go a little bit back to my original studies.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I guess I'll start with your second question and like work a little backwards from where you're all at with Barnard to my current role. So at Barnard, I majored in econ and social history. So I was always super interested in this intersection between data and decision making. My first job out of college was at S&P working in credit analysis. And even though I really liked the analytical rigor and the synthesizing complex data sets, I felt like something was missing. And I'd always been really driven by intellectual curiosity and really enjoyed creative problem solving, innovative thinking, and thought maybe strategy or consulting would be the next logical step. And I covered the retail sector during an internship. So my next role was at Macy's on their strategy team. And in this role, I worked on a variety of projects, partnering with FP&A to build a 3-year financial model, building out our personalization loyalty program. And now to kind of go full circle, I'm now newly back in the financial industry at M&T Bank, working on their enterprise strategy team, partnering with business leaders to kind of solve the bank's largest problems.
Beautiful. Thank you all so much. Under this big umbrella of this specific skill set, I feel like we're getting a really diverse range of roles and a really diverse range of work, which is fantastic for our students. Thinking on your career trajectory thus far, what opportunities do you find to be most valuable for you in getting involved in your current field? This could be past internships, and thinking on the importance of networking in any field, in any industry. I'm curious to know how you sort of built your community as well. And anyone can jump in.
I'm happy to go first. When I came into college, I thought I wanted to go to law school, but then after my first year in college, I interned at a corporate law firm, and I really enjoyed the work in some ways, and I actually ended up doing an off-cycle internship with them and continuing with them during the school year. But in the end, I just kind of decided that I'd rather, instead of working with corporations on the law side, I'd rather just work at a corporation, work on the business side. So that's just like a example of how my internship experience working at a law firm kind of made me more curious about big law firms work with banks. So maybe I should go work at a bank or a financial institution and see if I enjoy the business side instead of the law side of things. And so internship experiences were really valuable to me. After working at a corporate law firm, I worked at Merrill Lynch, and that kind of helped me get a taste of the financial industry before joining BlackRock. And one other thing that I would be remiss to not mention are, I think the names differ, but it's like college career insights days at different financial institutions. That's really common, and I think I found out about it through kind of things like Beyond Barnard or emails that would go out to students. But signing up for those kind of like 2-day programs where you go and visit a company, even though it's kind of like you just kind of sit through sessions where you learn about like different groups at the company and stuff like that, I think the biggest thing is it gives you an opportunity to network. Usually there's a session where you get to like meet people who actually work there. And so I would really recommend going to those kinds of events, because if you're able to get some contacts at these companies that are having like college student insight days, you can follow up with them. And that's how I actually ended up getting my internship at Merrill Lynch, which kind of got me to where I am today. So those are the two things I'd recommend: internship experiences and insight days.
Thanks for sharing, Johanna. I think my experience was a little different coming from the hard sciences and academia into the tech industry. I wasn't quite sure what opportunities were available to me as I was um, getting ready to defend my dissertation. So what I did is I reached out to alums, both Barnard alums, Columbia alums, and University of Pennsylvania alums who had a similar educational background as me, whether that was in engineering, applied math, or physics, and looked at what industries they were in and just reached out and did a lot of informational interviews about what skills they used, what their jobs were like. And I remember having a really great coffee chat with one alum who asked me to draw out on paper what skills do I use during my dissertation research and which of those skills do I love using the most. And from there, we were able to kind of be like, oh, you sound like a data scientist. You actually have a lot of machine learning experience. You could be a great fit for this. So that was really helpful for me. I did do RE research experiences for undergraduates in astrophysics at Barnard, and that research experience definitely helps prepare me for graduate school. But I would say now in the tech industry, especially for the more technical roles, they aren't looking for undergraduate level interns, they're looking for graduate level interns. So that's one thing to keep in mind if you're interested in a more machine learning focused career on like the West Coast tech industry.
I'd echo both what Ohana and Julia said. I think having those summer internships were in college were both like really helpful for the padding on your resume, but also just for learning about what you enjoy, don't enjoy, and building your network. I actually got one of my internships as well at Guggenheim my sophomore year because I went to a Beyond Barnard career fair. And I can't like emphasize enough how incredible of an opportunity it is to have employers come to you, to have that many employers come to the school and actually want you to intern for them, right? Or want you to work for them. And you're not going to have an opportunity like that again, likely. And then I think to what Julia was saying, I think this was a portal they made a few years ago, but Barnard Connect. When I was interested in strategy or consulting roles, I would message people on Barnard Connect as well. And you can filter for, what kind of role you're looking for. And people are always so much more willing to help you and to answer questions for you than you would think, especially as a student as well. When I was in college, I would always have a new idea about what career I wanted every month. And I remember I would tell my mentors, and they would always connect me with people who did the career that I was interested in, and talking to them kind of help you get a taste of what the job would look like without having to do the job itself. And then specifically for consulting or strategy roles, Barnard has this, or they, at least in 2021, they had a repository of like business cases that you can access and practice with. And there's also some kind of Barnard Consulting Club as well, where you can practice with other students.
I'll give a huge +1 to the resources at Barnard. I'm so glad that you mentioned this one because I forgot, but I got my first job out of college also through a Barnard career fair day just at the start of the semester, which was something I'm very grateful for. Something else I'll say about I guess looking for first jobs in general. I really was not sure what I wanted to do after college and just tried to think, where is there a place that I can learn as much as possible, and a place that wanted to invest a little bit in just kind of new college graduates who are learning general skills. So I ended up doing a rotational program at what was then a mature startup, which went through some acquisitions, so it doesn't exist anymore. But anyway, I think doing some kind of uh, starting where you get to try a few different things is a good thing to try to seek out. That's the kind of thing that there's way more of those available for your first job out of college than there are later on. One last thing I'll say on the networking front, after a few years of working in private sector tech companies, I felt like I wanted to make a shift towards public sector work and didn't really know where to get started. So when I was trying to figure out what was out there, I joined some volunteering groups. Specifically, I joined something called Code for Boston, but there's lots of chapters like this that are always looking for student volunteers, especially who have some more quantitative background. That was a really good way of just meeting other people who had similar skill sets and were looking for different ways of applying those, who were really eager to share a lot of information. So, looking for volunteer opportunities if you're interested in something more public service oriented is also a great idea.
My trajectory into quant, it's a little random. So I started off with film festivals at at Barnard. So I was doing a lot of internships with film festivals like the Athena Film Festival and the Children's International Film Festival. And I was really fascinated by how people behave on media and how that influences different populations. So that goes back to like my earlier point of like I love just observing people and understanding where they come from. And so following Barnard, I actually did a master's in education and I focused on children's educational media. So like how can you use film in a way that can impact certain populations in a positive way? And I was just talking to a lot of alums, and that's something I recommend in general, just talking and connecting as much as possible because you never know what's out there. And then one of the alums was like, oh, there's consultant, but there's also market research where you can basically talk to people directly, consumers directly, and understand their behaviors. And there's literally something for everybody. There's gamers, there's people who test movie trailers. I primarily work in the tech and social media spaces. So I work with a lot of like TikTok, Instagram companies, understanding their consumers. But if you're interested in any aspect of anything, market research can fund that for you. And so a lot of what I do is like writing surveys and sometimes going up to people and asking them like, hey, what do you think of TikTok? Is this a brand that you would consider in the future? And so those are all skills that you can learn at any point. If you can, if you're interested in say in social media and you're in that space, that's something that you could bring into any market research company and bring that knowledge into it. And what really helped at MarketCast was also building out more Excel experience. At least in my work, in my quantitative work, I use a lot of Excel. I use a lot of data visualization. We love to basically give the clients beautiful graphs and PowerPoints. So that's something you definitely need to know how to do ahead of time because we definitely lean into that a lot in my role. And what also helped at Barnard was taking very basic coding classes. That's something I didn't realize was going to help, but very basic coding classes teaches you the logic of how to structure questions. So when I'm writing a national survey that's going to be sent out to thousands of people, I know how to structure the questions in a way that makes sense so that different types of groups can take it. And the last thing I want to say, it's in terms of community, there's a lot of women in research groups. There's a ton on LinkedIn, a ton just in general that provide resources for women to connect and come together when it comes to quantitative research. And I could definitely send out a list of companies that I am aware of, but yeah, there's a lot of support when it comes to market research.
Thank you so much. It's so interesting to hear how all of you have gathered like so many different skill sets from these like wide range of spaces that are actually transferable to your current work, even if they're not directly related, at least on a surface level. And on that note, I'm curious to hear, what does your day-to-day work look like?
I can go ahead. So, you know, I work in the asset management space. And so when you're looking at finance careers post-grad, asset management is usually known to have more work-life balance. And that's something that I found to be really attractive about going to BlackRock grad, because I feel like a lot of people hear horror stories about like working insane hours in finance. And I kind of realized that I want to enjoy my 20s and do other things outside of work. So work-life balance is really important to me. And I think for the most part, that has still remained true in my experience now 3 years in the workforce. So in terms of my day-to-day, usually I won't bore you with like all the specific details, but broadly it usually starts with maybe like a team meeting where I update my team on what I'm working on, strategy calls about my current projects, which is a lot of work that I do with senior executives at the company since I'm a sales strategist. So kind of like identifying top opportunities and briefing them on insights that I found using large data sets. And then also there's usually a component of my day. In an ideal world, like at least 2 to 3 hours a day where it's concentrated work time, where I do more focused data analysis work, just to kind of like get organized and ready for those upcoming strategy meetings I have. On a side note, I also want to mention that I'm actually going to be starting a new role very soon in the next month or so at BlackRock, where I'm going to be a product strategist in the private credit space. So it kind of, the reason why I mentioned that is because as I've kind of listed out in my day-to-day, it's a lot of like sitting at a desk and kind of looking at a PowerPoint or looking at Excel. And I kind of realized, even though I really enjoy that, like learning about the business and kind of getting into the weeds of the data, I also get a lot of energy from working with people. But I still want to be like kind of technical. So I thought that a product strategist role as my next step in my career would be great, because I want to kind of like change my day-to-day from being just like sitting at a desk and like putting together presentations or doing analysis to working with people more and presenting in front of clients. And so that's kind of where I'm working on growing my career towards, and how it'll evolve over the next year or so, which is exciting. So my new role will have like much more travel and presentations on technical aspects of funds instead of kind of like holistic strategic decision making that I do now. So that's kind of like a broad overview of my current role, as well as where I want to grow in terms of my day-to-day work.
Congratulations on your new role. That's so exciting.
Thank you.
I think my days might look a little different. I'll start with the tools I use to how I do my work, and then who I'm doing work with and what that looks like. So I'm working with big data, every home, apartment, condo, residential structure in the United States, and all of the associated data attached to that. So taxes, property information, what different real estate organizations, what info they have. So very large data sets. I access that data. Right now we're based in AWS. So all that data is stored in the cloud on S3. Also, Zillow is based in the cloud, which is not a real place, but they insist on saying that. But we're fully remote. Most of my computing work is also done on our AI platform, which is based off of AWS. So I'm working with Python and PySpark, and I'm prototyping code in kind of a cloud-based notebook setting. And then I work with a machine learning engineer to move that prototype code into production. And so typically I have 4 or 5 big data product releases a year. So each project will take a few months to be able to figure out, what do we want to build? What data do we have? What's the quality of that data? And all of the analysis is done usually in PySpark. On top of that, if you don't know what that is, look it up or reach out to me. And then making a prototype of this data product for our stakeholders to use, whether they're internal or external stakeholders, getting sign off from those stakeholders, and then again, working with those machine learning engineers to get it into production. It is kind of a high level. So I have a good balance of meeting with data folks and stakeholder facing meetings to make sure that whatever I'm building meets their use case. I would say there's a little bit of SQL writing. If you're interested in data science roles, you definitely need to know SQL. You definitely need to know Python. And having some applied big data experience is important. I would say as you get more senior, you have a lot more meetings pop up and you have less of that heads down focus time. So something a lot of tech companies do is they have focus days where they don't have meetings, so you can actually have that done. I can't speak to other industries, but it's something I've seen become more common and respected over the past couple of years. Kind of what my day-to-day looks like.
I can go next. So with my particular role, since I'm in the social media tech space, primarily a lot of what happens is I talk to the clients first. And a lot of the clients come to me and they're like, hey, we have this audience, like let's say we have Gen Zers, but they're not using a certain feature as often. Can you figure out why? And so then I will go in with my team and discuss like, oh, this is potentially why, like let's test it out. And so then what I particularly do is I write surveys. So I'm like, okay, are you like let's say it's Instagram. You could say, are you an Instagram user? How often do you use this feature? Like, why won't you use it? Just basic questions that you would ask them to basically answer the client's objectives. And then I would send that survey out to, depending on what market. So if it's in the US, it could be in South Korea, all that good stuff. And from there, let's say it's like 2,000 respondents back that answer our survey. Then I go into the data and I'm analyzing it. I'm like, okay, this demographic says they like this feature because of this, or this demographic doesn't feel like it connects with them. And basically builds out a story from the data that we receive back and figure out why exactly there's a drop in user from this company. So that's essentially like my role in a nutshell when it comes to quant. And the cool thing about market research is there's also a qualitative component to it. So, particularly for myself, I do both roles, qual and quant. So with the qual is you go in person sometimes in the respondent's home and you observe them in their day-to-day, or sometimes you may have a workshop and bring a bunch of people over and ask them in front of everybody, like, hey, what is it about this brand that you like or not? So there is a travel component to market research. So that's really fun. A lot of the times you get to, go to LA, and if you're working for like a Amazon, you get to go in the office and do the research in person. Or sometimes you get to observe the respondents in their church or in the space. It really depends on what the clients need. And a lot of the tools that I use are Excel. So it doesn't have to be crazy advanced Excel skills. It could be basic. A lot of Excel, a lot of PowerPoints, because we need to, after we get the data back, present it or leave it for the client so that they can see it. And a lot of survey platforms. So it could be like SurveyMonkey or Qualtrics. Or my particular company, we use Dynata data platform, which is like a huge data collector responding company. So I would say it's not like a difficult industry to jump into. Like you can learn everything on the job as well, because my background was not particularly in quant when I was at Barnard. So everything I learned was more on the job. But I feel like if you know basic Excel, basic statistics, all that good stuff, you will be good to go.
Maybe I can say a little bit about my day-to-day now. I'll give some context for the types of things I work on, so it makes a little more sense. So as a data product manager, I, similar to what Julia said, have kind of a few major products that I'm working on releasing every year. So, and maybe like one or two a quarter. So rather than having a kind of new thing to work on every day, I'm kind of each day chipping away at something that'll take a number of months to complete. So my role as a data product manager right now is, I think a decent summary of this is a lot of work that comes into the analytics team that I work on is kind of these one-off requests. And my job as a product manager is to look at these holistically and say, okay, we're getting 20 requests in every quarter. Is there anything that we can build that can be a more sustainable self-serve product so that we can answer our stakeholders' questions in a more automated way instead of needing to constantly hire more analysts to solve all of the new questions that come up. So with that in mind, I would say a lot of my day is kind of looking at existing analyses projects that people on my team are working on, working with them to understand what a dashboard or writing certain queries, and then also working with stakeholders who have asked for this type of analysis in various departments across the city to understand what are the decisions that they're trying to make, that why are they asking for the data that they asked for, that sort of thing, and really kind of trying to be a little bit of a bridge between the more technical folks, so data engineers and data analysts, and stakeholders in different departments who aren't necessarily as worried about the intricacies of the data and more just want to have enough information so that they can make an informed decision. So I think it's in my role, it's very useful to be able to like speak comfortably about more technical topics, but I'm much less in the weeds than some other folks have talked about. Like I'm not coding in this role or anything, but I do think it was helpful that in previous roles that I had, there was more data analysis work using SQL and doing like basic data visualizations, that kind of thing. That really helps me be able to communicate with different types of users who I'm talking with. But right now, a lot of my day to day is we're meeting with people to make sure we're understanding this is the direction we're going in. Is this still on track for what people have asked us for?
I'm quite new at M&T, so I can talk a bit about my Macy's role more reliably. Each day was a little different based on what projects I was working on, but as maybe an example day, I might spend my morning working with our marketing team on comparing and measuring the success of our public-facing coupons versus our loyalty-only coupons versus flash sales that we're seeing, and then maybe get a message from someone saying that they want us to look into duplicative work within the enterprise data and analytics org, work a bit on that, and then join a meeting to help with our returns modernization initiative. And then towards the end of the day, our team as a whole will kind of meet together and share out what work we've been doing and what progress we've made on that. I guess overall, I think my role does quite a bit of simpler data analysis and data visualization. There's kind of a joke in consulting or strategy that it's a lot of slide building. It definitely is a lot of slide building, but if you get really good at visualizing complex data or just getting, whatever your big Excel sheet is onto one pretty slide, it really does get the message across really well. And that really helps people digest information.
Beautiful. Thank you all so much. We're reaching our last question. So for our students in the room, if you have questions, prepare them. You can start dropping them in the chat as well. But for our panelists, what advice would you give to students who are interested in pursuing a career that's centered on the use of their quantitative skills as well as statistics, but are unsure of where to start?
I could start. I think in general with quantitative, I think what helped at Barnard was taking statistics for sure. And like I said before, taking a basic coding class where you can learn the basics of how logic is formed. That can be really helpful in terms of building your thinking when it comes to building up surveys. And data analyzing, how do you, if you get a graph or lots of data back, how can you between the lines to figure out the story or the, like what's happening in data. If you can become really good at that, telling the story through numbers, that could be extremely helpful. And like everybody here was saying too before, like how to make your data very pretty, how to make PowerPoint very beautiful, very presentable, so that you can get the story across really easily to someone who wasn't as familiar with the data. Those are the primarily skills. Learning Excel, how to tell stories through data, that's key. And in terms of specific tools, a lot of the tools I use in my industry are Tableau, Power BI. I also see a lot of job postings for SQL. I know, Julia, you mentioned that earlier. That's also really important. So if you could learn those skills either in class or at an internship, that can really place you ahead of the curve for entry-level roles at this kind of industry.
Yeah, I think based on, even what all the panelists have been sharing, is the first piece that there are so many career options where these skills can be leveraged. And I want to say that they're useful in virtually every career. The ability to translate complex data into something that can be comprehensible is super vital. And again, just like echoing, you should take advantage of all the programming that Barnard has to offer on like qualitative skills, and even touch loosely on these things, on qualitative skills, on potential careers, because it could lead you down this rabbit hole that inspires the next thing you want to do. And there's like the Empirical Reasoning Center. There are all these resources that Barnard has to kind of help you hone these skills. And it's a great place to be able to just develop in a low stakes way that you wouldn't have to do on the job.
Also, in terms of just like figuring out what you want to do in your career, I think sometimes we miss like the most obvious thing. And for me, in terms of finding jobs when I was in college, Google was really my friend in terms of just like looking up like, for me, I'm just going to speak to my experience, which is looking at jobs in the finance industry. And I think that if you're interested in a career in finance, a lot of which center around quantitative skills and statistics, it can be really confusing because there's these like titles for different types of roles and you don't really know what they mean. So I really found like internet forums online, like Wall Street Oasis. When I, came about that was super helpful because people really break down what the recruiting process is like and when applications open. And that's something that really wasn't brought to my attention. Maybe like when I was looking for internships after my freshman year, right? And it was super informational in that way. And even like other forums like Reddit, just like kind of seeing what advice people have out there about like certain processes was really helpful for me personally. And then also kind of like thinking about your career, maybe identifying your skills and what you enjoy most, and kind of like using maybe like a decision tree format or something, like identifying, what do you enjoy from each of your skills and what kind of jobs might align with what you enjoy, right? Because obviously in an ideal world, we would want to be fulfilled in the careers we pursued too. So those are kind of like two more general points in terms of figuring out what you might want to do.
I'd say if you're interested in the tech industry, definitely reach out to alums or people in your network to get an understanding of, are you actually interested in the tech industry? It's a little bit different. Again, for these more technical roles, we only consider folks who are either in a master's or doctorate program, or who are about to finish. I would recommend focusing on a more classic program like a statistics or physics or a math or an economics over a data science focused program. Definitely, I would say when we're interviewing candidates, folks who just have a bachelor's and then maybe have done like a data science boot camp tend to be lower weighted or less preferred than people who are in a more, again, like classic discipline master's or doctoral program. That's not to say it's impossible. It's just you'll be funneled into different roles. So just and talking to people and knowing what these different roles at companies look like. So for some companies, a data scientist role has a data science name, but it's more analyst focused, and you're working. The tools you're using are different, and your career opportunities there are a little different long term. So I would just do your research, ask questions, be aware of the job requirements and what gives you energy and how that may or may not align with different opportunities at companies. Um, I never took a stats class in my undergrad or graduate, unless you count statistical mechanics. So I wish I had taken a stats class. I also never took a programming course, but I learned through my undergraduate research opportunities. So um, I would highly recommend taking stats and programming, but also look for opportunities outside of those traditional coursework offerings that can hone those skills as well.
I think there's so many different types of uh, opportunities that use quantitative skills, as everyone's answers have really just gotten at. So maybe I'll say one thing that's, I think, Julia, maybe addressing like sort of the flip side of what you were just mentioning. So before working for the city of Boston, um, I worked for a company called Aptexis, which was like a thousand-ish person tech company. And there were definitely a lot of quantitative focused roles that I think were more the way you were saying, like analytics roles, which is totally a role that you can get right out of college. And, just so many blue skies, lots of opportunities in different types of fields. But that's all just to say it's really hard to know about these without kind of getting your feet wet a little bit. So I think the biggest thing that I would say is as you're looking for internships, trying to try out like a bunch of different types of internships, even if you learn just a tiny bit during the internship process. In terms of like the actual projects you're working on, I think you can get a really good insight into what types of roles there are and how people usually get into those roles. So saying that there are some things that you can get in tech, I think, right after college. But to Julia's point, they're definitely a little bit of a different type of focus, but there's a lot out there.
Great, thank you both so much. Thank you all so much. We do have a question here from student Saki. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. What advice do you have for rising sophomores in finding internships or REUs or research experiences for undergrads? And how did you spend your summers while you were at Barnard? And anyone can jump in.
I can kick it off. So first summer, I worked freshman to sophomore to junior, and junior to senior. I did REUs that I had applied through the NSF application process. Again, my undergraduate major was astrophysics, so focusing on astronomy or astrophysics research graduate experiences. I did one at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory and another at the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory at Harvard. Those were great. They were both great for my graduate school applications, and I included them for when I was first applying to jobs out of graduate school. So applying through NSF, they have like a centralized application process that you go through. I know Barnard also has summer science research programs as well that would also give you excellent applied research experience. For the tech industry, typically for undergraduate level internships, you will get kind of funneled into a more analytics intern, which is a great experience. It gives you an understanding of what that looks like, kind of what the faster paced world of tech looks like. but know that you might not get kind of those beefy research experiences that you would get from an REU, where sometimes you can get a paper out of those experiences. Oh, and I would say, how did I get those? I did do some light networking at there's an annual astronomy conference every January, and I really just like zeroed in on the program leaders at those conferences and tried to present myself well and articulately for their programs in a really gentle but direct way.
For me, I worked at a corporate law firm the summer after my freshman year, so going into my sophomore year. And then between my sophomore and junior year, I actually worked part-time at that same corporate law firm because I continued with them over the year. And then also took some time to study. I took like 2 summer courses and tried to kind of like get ahead on certain classes I wanted to spend like more dedicated time on. Like in the econ major, econometrics is known as a really difficult class. So I wanted to get really good at it and focus on it and not be like bogged down by my other classes during the semester. So I did it during the summer and I found it to be really helpful and I learned a lot more from doing it then. And then, yeah, my third summer, so between my sophomore and junior year, or between my junior and senior year, I worked at BlackRock. And so I think like generally it's nice that when you're early on in your college experience, there's a lot more flexibility to maybe pursue different academic passions, try out different types of jobs. There's less pressure. So I think it's like, that's the time where you can really try something out and see if you like it. Whereas a lot of people, especially if you're going into the finance world like I did, tend to want to kind of get an offer between their junior and senior year so they can go back to work at a certain company after graduating. So then that's a little bit more pressure. So I would say if you're earlier on in your college career, that's the time to maybe explore or maybe pursue some academic pursuits. Whereas like you can still have more tangible long-term professional goals that maybe you'd want to save for later summers down the line.
Great. I have a question in my inbox here, but I also have received questions from students as to whether they're able to unmute themselves to ask questions too. So why don't we have a question from someone that wants to unmute themselves, and then I'll also get to our question from my inbox as well.
Hi. Thank you everyone for the talk. It was really insightful. And my name is Yuki. I'm a junior and I major in cognitive science and sociology. So I actually have 2 questions for Delaney. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. So my first question is, I'm actually really interested in the industries that you work in or like work with, like especially gaming. I just think it's such a creative space. And I didn't realize that market research is also like a really like thriving discipline in that. So the first thing is like I'm curious about the most valuable kinds of data you look for now in market research with regards to like social media and gaming. And my second question is I honestly have a hard time learning statistics, but I still try to take like comp sci classes. And I'll be taking a class in data visualization next semester. And I'm just really curious about whether like AI has been changing the way you work and produce advertisements. Like, do you think it has made your quantitative work more manageable?
Yes, and hopefully I remember all your questions. But
I can't.
the first part, in terms of the questions we usually get, a lot of companies come to us and they're like, hey, we have no idea who our audience are. Can you figure it out who our target audience is, what demographic, what age, what I don't know, what country. So that's a lot of the questions we get. Or sometimes, I don't know, with gaming, it could also be like, we are developing this new feature on the app. can you test out how this feature will do amongst our consumers to see if they like it? And if they don't, we can go back and change it and figure it out. So those are like essentially some of the questions that I tend to work on. And again, gaming, at least in my company, is very niche. So I think it's like maybe 15 people who are really big gamers. So they know everything of what it comes to, like, you know, I don't even know, board games or I have no idea, but they know other gaming. They are obsessed. So that's really cool because you can meet like-minded people like that who and they can teach you more. And then in terms of the AI, AI has been helping a lot more in terms of synthesizing information quicker. So I don't have to manually now, you know, look through the data points all the time. Like I can go to AI and ask them like, hey, can you figure out which data points higher or lower when it comes to this demographic? I think it streamlined the process a bit more. And the cool thing about quantitative is there's still a high need for a quantitative researcher. Versus qualitative, it's losing its impact a little bit more because you could now have that AI person do that. With quant, it's still a high demand, so I think it's a good career to go into right now because I know AI has been impacting other industries, but at least for quant, it's a much needed industry. So I think it's a good career path if you're interested.
Thank you.
Beautiful. We have room for one last question here. Sophia is asking, and this might be relevant for our panelists who've undergone master's programs, but Sophia is asking, what advice would you give to a senior who is starting a master's in data science? What steps do you think the student should take regarding internships and applications specifically in applying to jobs after graduation, specifically graduating the master's program?
Yeah, I can start off. So most data science master's programs have like a capstone project or an internship where you're matched with a company. If if that is not offered by your program, I would definitely seek those opportunities out. A lot of times companies are hiring from those internship programs. And cast your net wide. Just because you start out doing an internship, I think my first job was with a very small startup that failed to start up, working with geospatial location data that I had no background in. I taught myself a new programming language to be able to do the job. I don't use geospatial data regularly now, but it's something that I have a little bit of experience in. So I would say just anything that sounds interesting, or even if it doesn't sound interesting, be a little curious about why and cast your net wide when the time comes to apply to those internships. I would say start building your network while you're in your master's program. Again, reaching out to alumni. Something that I've done for folks coming out of master's programs is done like a resume review or mock interview practice. There's a lot of services out there that you can pay to do that with, because the interview is, again, for like the Mang companies, is a very like formulaic way of interviewing. So you can hire somebody to do mock interviews, or you can reach out to alums who might do that for you for free in a more supportive setting. But yeah, so start early, cast your net wide. Don't get discouraged if the internship or the capstone project that you end up doing is not something you're super passionate about. It's just a stepping stone to other data sets, other opportunities that'll come along.
Do other panelists want to add, maybe even in regards to not exactly to like after graduating a master's program, but any tips on sort of application material advice to be mindful of? I know I'm putting everyone on the spot here. I do want to be mindful of our panelists' time. So we'll start closing out here. Thank you again to our alums for joining us today and providing such thoughtful insight. For our panelists, you'll be hearing from me. I'll put everyone in one email so that contact information can be exchanged. For our students, we hope to see you at our next Career Insights event in the spring semester. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.